about our speakers. Abbey Perini is a full-stack web developer. She's passionate about accessibility. She worked in Vue, React, and even AngularJS. She's happiest when she's problem-solving and in the front end, back end, and all the APIs and microservices in between. She loves blogging and speaking about fun and useful things about programming, especially if it helps other developers. Thank you, Abby. Very honored to have you here. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And Mirela, also thank you. She's a startup designer and community manager at Effect. She blends design and community to champion accessibility from day one. And she has a keen eye for inclusive UX. She's dedicated to making an impact through thoughtful, accessible design. Thank you for joining us, Mirela. We're very much looking forward to hearing from you. We'll start the session now. And we'll jump. Do you want to introduce yourself, talk about inclusion first before we jump into questions? No, hi.
Do you want us to talk about just what accessibility is in general, or?
Well, we can go into the questions. I think that the questions are pretty broad and you can develop from there then.
Yeah.
So why is accessibility critical in building an inclusive web? And what does true inclusion look like online? Deep question.
So, to me, the core philosophy of the web is that anyone should be able to view your content. When you make a website, you're hoping that everyone that goes to that URL can view whatever you've put on there and get that information. And 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. So if you're not thinking about how to include people with disabilities, then you're excluding a full fourth of your people that you want to get that information and that can buy your product if that website is for a product.
Definitely. And to add to what just Abby said, like in practical terms, if if a customer won't be able to complete the checkout system because due to accessibility issues, that won't be beneficial to your business. But not only that, even we're seeing more in Europe, but also in the US. That even government institutions requiring people to perform certain tasks exclusively online. So it's not just a luxury. Now it's a necessity. So it's a universal. It's a universal right. So and I think that it also be considered as part of usability. And which is why it's getting more and more relevant, even from a regulation perspective, at least here in Europe and also in the US, as far as I know. You're muted, Anna.
Sorry. What are some practical steps teams can take to adopt an accessibility first mindset in their workflow?
In development, I've heard this referred to as shift left, where like left is the beginning of the process. So wherever you are starting now, you can think what's 1 step earlier in the process. So when you're designing a feature, obviously that would be the perfect time from the beginning. But if you're currently only thinking about it when an issue is reported, then shifting 1 step left would be adding it to your QA process so that it's part of your testing process before it goes out to a customer. If you're already adding it to your testing process, then can you add it to your PR review process if you're a developer, making sure that when you're reviewing somebody else's code, you run it and you test it and check for accessibility then, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure Mirela has some great things to say about including it in design.
Well, thank you for talking about the relevance of the QA as a developer, and I'm sure you know the pain from the QA reviews, but as a matter of fact, most accessibility issues arise from design. So the QA then the QA will point out most issues that should have been corrected in the design stage, and then the burden falls on the developers and at a later stage. But yeah, having a process definitely helps. Having a sort of I'm not really against checklists, but instead of having a clear structure of who should do what. Because accessibility is not just about the technical aspects of what we are designing and building, but also from the content perspective. Because, for example, who is checking the link labels? Because is that a developer's responsibility, a designer's, or who's responsible for the content? Or is there a content a copywriter or a content person in the team? So having a clear structure and a sort of everybody knows everybody knows their responsibilities for each stage of the design and development, that definitely helps. And also having a general awareness in the team of what is accessibility, because at the end of the day, also the developer should also be able to see if an alt text of an image is totally irrelevant to the rest of the content. So yeah, that would help, like, give each other a hand in the whole process. And then yeah, in simple terms, there are so many automated tools out there that really helps in checking if something is right or wrong. So for example, if the alt text is missing or not. And but then you should be the one actually adding it and making sure that it is appropriate. And having maybe having an accessibility champion, as they like to call them, or just someone that, even if they may not be like fully responsible of the whole accessibility in the team, but someone that people can just send a message to. Hey, what do you think of this issue? Should I do this way or the other? So just someone who is really passionate and people can use them as a reference. But yeah, there's no right way to do it. So yeah, just try and see what works for your team.
Thank you. It's great. It's good to have this thought that everyone in the team, like from design to developers, have a role in accessibility, each one in their area. So when you were saying content, it's like not also like the responsibility of the developer. So the person who is dealing with content also has their own, as I said, like a checklist or their own accessibility steps to take. Thank you. Can you share a moment when an accessibility improvement directly impacted the user experiences or life?
So I think one of the things that a lot of people miss is accessibility helps every single one of us. So in the US, if you've ever looked for a curb cut where you can take your grocery cart down a ramp instead of having to like awkwardly get it over a curb to get to your car, that happened because of pushes for accessibility for people in like wheelchairs. If you think about stoplights, here we have 3 colors, but the colors are always in the same location on the stoplight so that people who are red-green colorblind can tell when the red light is on and when the green light is on without needing to be able to differentiate them by color. If you are someone who or maybe your parent or grandparent has on their phone all the text blown up to a larger size so that they can read it. A big part of digital accessibility is making sure that all the apps and all the websites also enlarge the text so that they can read it, and then all of that text is still visible on the page. So every single one of us is being affected by accessibility improvements that accessibility advocates have fought long and hard for every single day. A big one for me as someone with a cognitive disability is something like being able to end a subscription on a website in like 1 or 2 clicks. Todd Libby talks about like malicious patterns. I forget the term off the top of my head.
Dark patterns?
I think we're trying to steer away from dark. Deceptive patterns. Thank you, Kathy. Where like people will try to keep you in the subscription by making it so that you have to click 6 buttons. And I have problems with 6 buttons. If you can make it in 1 button, that's when I'll be able to cancel a subscription. So it traps people in subscriptions. So even just knowledge of that pattern helps people designing these flows make it easier for me to complete. Also, showing visible labels for forms, because if you just use the placeholder text to tell me what I should put into a form, I will forget. I will have to delete my entire answer and go back and look at what your placeholder was to figure out what I was supposed to be putting in there in the first place. So it's users and everyone is impacted by accessibility wins more than they realize.
Yes, those were great examples. And sometimes they're caused intentionally, deceptive patterns. Sometimes it's just due to neglect or maybe an aesthetic decision when they do not provide the label to a form element, form field, or that just because you don't know that it's that's important. And an example that I can provide is, for example, all the government websites in the UK, all the gov.uk websites, they have to be written in plain English, which means they have to be written in a way that they are comprehensive by everyone. So you don't need to be to have a degree in law to be able to understand what the government is telling you. And in my experience, that is the only government that has done this, because I've seen other websites, official websites in the US, and they are not always easy to be able to understand what they're actually asking of you, what's the exact procedure you need to follow. And also in European countries, when you receive like a tax letter from the government, like in Italy, for example, it's written in a way that you actually need to hire an accountant professional to be able to understand what the government wants from you. And that is an accessibility issue, for example. And in my own experience, I once had a client who they were providing standards. They provide standards for manufacturing physical products. And they had some accessibility issues in the way they were providing these documents to their own customers. And after a few workshops we did together, it was like, at least from their perspective, it was very eye-opening to see, because I couldn't understand why some of their customers were using screen readers, and they couldn't understand what were the issues. Like, it's not that they were not willing to solve it, but they couldn't understand the issues. And yeah, that was a great moment for my customer and for me personally, because yeah, we're able to solve that. And the workshop did not involve just designers in that case, but also salespeople and other professionals that were actually writing and uploading in their CMS the content. So yeah, it goes way more just design and development. And yeah, I always like to put the focus on the people who actually initially create the content and then provide it to the designers or developers that needs to implement it online.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. What are the most common accessibility mistakes developers and designers still make?
So for web developers, Web AIM puts out a report every year called the Web AIM Million, where they test the top 1 million websites. And every year, the most common accessibility mistakes are color contrast and alt text. And something like 76% of the top 1 million websites have the color contrast issues. And alt text is maybe in the 50 something. And these are easy lifts for both developers and designers to fix. Thank you for linking it, Kathy. And they are the kinds of things that it's not a huge like overhaul of your site, but color contrast is often the difference between someone being able to read your content and not read your content. I know people who don't even realize that it's an accessibility issue have put in tickets that I've fixed where they're like, I can't read this red on white for error text. I have no idea what the error is. I don't know how to fill out this form. So that's what I always point people towards as far as things that are the most common mistakes.
Yeah, and color contrast, it's also in theory the easiest one to fix also. So yeah, and like these days, I'm in Milan and I've been using the subway, and all the indications of the subway are in green background, or if you have any issues with your any vision impairments, then it is really hard to, I really need to get close to it because I'm not sure that if it's, and I know that if I test it on Figma, I know that it doesn't pass the test, the color contrast test. But yeah, this is how they built it. And one other thing is, I mentioned it before, and but yeah, I want to point it out again. It's the link labels, because for example, people who use screen readers, sometimes they navigate a web page just going through the links. And imagine that you're going through the links and all you hear is go here, open this link, read more, learn more, and you don't have the possibility in this way to understand what the page is about. Instead of, if you use buy this bag, or just read this document by mentioning the document name specifically in the link label. So that is and it also helps that not just people who use the screen readers, but also someone who all of us just, when we consume content on a web page, we just go through it very quickly, and our eyes usually go to links. And if it's a learn more, that won't catch my attention. So yeah, there are so many reasons on why we should take care more of that. And yeah, that, and keyboard navigation is also very, very important in general. So making sure that drop downs work specifically, and if you're using like a web framework, like using ready-made components, make sure that framework is using accessibility standards. And if you're building them on your own, and if it's a custom build component, make sure that you follow those standards and ultimately test it. So there are so many others, but this is one that I really it's not always mentioned, and I always notice.
So on point. And Mirela, have you had the experience hanging out with other accessibility nerds where you're just walking around a place and you're like, color contrast, not good. Can't read that.
Yeah, always nagging people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you fix the color contrast? But the links thing is so important, and it goes back to, you know, designing the content and making sure that your content is written in an accessible way, which is so important, and you keep putting out. But for me, you got a little real body, so I'm going to repeat the thing you said about screen readers. When someone is using a screen reader to navigate the page, they get several different ways to navigate the page, and one of those is grouping all of the links together. So to your point, if it's always here, you're just going to get 30 here's. Like, no one's going to know what that link is. And it's not just blind users using screen readers. I know a lot of people with dyslexia use them to get through websites quicker without having to read. So imagine finally having a tool that helps you read a web page, and then you get 30 here's, and you're like, "Oh, I gotta go back to the other way."
That is true.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of my own questions, but I'll save it to the end. How can teams effectively balance innovation with inclusive design, especially when you're working with cutting edge tech like AI or Web3?
So Sarah Sudan just put out a great article going through assessing how um, the new CSS carousel spec fits in with accessibility requirements. So she starts with talking about what the requirements are. So you need to know your requirements. You need to know what standards you have to adhere to with whatever technology you need to use. And then she goes and puts them in different examples of that. So a horizontal list or cards or scrolls by. And then she assesses how the new spec fits into those accessibility requirements, and talks about struggles people may have when they're developing with that new technology and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend reading through that as a way to look at an accessibility expert absolutely just evaluating a cutting edge technology and how they would approach it. It is, I've been sharing it everywhere. It's a great article.
Share those.
Do you mean specifically like if you're using an AI tool in your process in general, or if you're working in the field?
So when
No, I meant like to Ana Luisa, like how is the question in general?
okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I think it's more in general, like if you're incorporating AI in your website, like how does it play out, and that's a question I have, like in general, like how do people with disabilities interact with AI? And is there a difference anyway, or is there an improvement that can be made yet?
Well, I believe AI will increasingly help us a lot, even, and I'm talking about the design stage. And we nowadays now we have tools like V0, that's the one that I have tried myself, and that is based on the components that the interfaces that it creates are based on the CN framework that implements accessibility features in their framework. So from a technical perspective, that makes it feel like it's a very positive thing. So they built this platform using a framework that with accessibility in mind. And yeah, as a designer, just always make sure that you're checking on just don't trust blindly AI, basically, if you include it in your process. And yeah, just make sure to use it for to quickly test your assumptions. And ideally, we should all be able to test our assumptions with real users. But we all know that that is not always possible, because not all, we don't all work at Google or Apple alike. So we always have the resources to test and the time to test everything, every product and every interface with real users. So yeah, just making sure we educate ourselves, and always we're always checking on every tool we're using, AI or not. I don't know if that answers the question, because maybe I didn't get the question well, but yeah, just tell me.
I think that's spot on. Always check your assumptions, always check what is being put out. As far as like actually interacting with the AI itself, it goes back to, you want everybody to be able to interact with your content. Are people designing however you interact with the AI, those that web page or whatever, so that somebody with a keyboard or a screen reader or cognitive disabilities can interact with it? I know that for terminal and IDEs, a lot of people like to use speech to text or just talk to their computer. So is it working with tools like Talon or Dragon Naturally Speaking, things like that? I have not evaluated them myself, so I can't speak to anything else about that.
Thank you. Yeah. Question. What tools or testing methods do you recommend for ensuring accessibility from early design through production?
So I can speak to the tools that I use for development and checking. Axe has a DevTools extension in the browser, as well as a linter that you can use in like VS Code. So if you try to go and add an image without alt text or a link without text in it, it will give you the little error squigglies. There are several other automated tools in and out of the browser, like Wave and Arc, and IBM has one, as well as Microsoft. And a couple of those, I think maybe IBM and another one, do have a manual testing, like step-by-step process that takes you through it. And I can link this blog where I got all of the tools and find another link for the linter in a second. But you should learn manual testing. You should learn how to test with a keyboard and a screen reader. When you go to a website, try not using your mouse. Try tabbing through and see if you can tell every single thing that you are focused on. Screen readers, we talked about, there are several ways that people navigate with screen readers. You can get a list of headings, you can get a list of landmark roles. So once you start learning all the different ways that you can use a screen reader, you really understand how important it is to use things like semantic HTML and look at your page structure and look at what the accessibility tree is putting out. I think that's it. I think that's my answer for that one.
Yeah, and to add to what Abby just said, in the design stage, an automatic check that, yeah, the easiest one is the color, checking the color contrast. And not just for text, but also when we're using color to for links, for example, or any other active interactive elements in the interface. Buttons, drop downs, and if we're using, it is recommended to use at least 2 cues to make the interactive elements distinguishable. And if you're using color as one of the cues, make sure to check it also, not just the text, but also the color that we're using on any interactive element. And that, yeah, that would be an automatic check. One more thing that we can use as a tool is, like, even as we've completed our Figma file, we can add accessibility annotations to the design file itself. That helps improving the collaboration with the developers, but also your own process. Just reasoning why you've made a certain decision at a certain point, and why and then when you get back to that design file, at least, you just quickly remember why you made a certain decision for that part of the design. So that would be the automatic check, and it's all manual considerations. So the annotations and all the other the manual testing on the content before going into production development, and of course then production. So then Abbey mentioned all the other tools, so I have no other. Just to keep insisting on the importance of the manual testing from the design stage and then to the development. And standardizing your work. So having this, of course, having design systems and or specific guidelines. That really, really helps.
Thank you. I really like the point that Abby mentioned about using a screen reader yourself. I've done it for I used it for 2 days. Like if I was dependent on it, because that's how you start to think. Also, I like to know if the accessibility changes I'm making is not making it too annoying for the screen readers, because I think that creates another accessibility issue if you're repeating the same word several times. So I'm always curious how it will play out in the screen reader. And
that is so important, what you just said. As like when you test it, or as you're designing or developing, just build that empathy as you were depending on it also. So that's those are key words there.
And Mirela's point about design systems, it is so much easier to make sure that you have correct color contrast if the developers only have a couple choices. If you were like, these are the colors you're using, use them like this, a lot of issues go away. So great point.
Like simple annotation, for example, like for this background, it's only these 3 colors should go. And in this context, of course, because it depends on if it's a website or a product. So because the developer doesn't have to think, okay, what should I use here?
Yes, I don't want to think. Don't make me think.
Next question. How can people advocate for accessibility within their companies, and especially when it's not prioritized yet?
So this is a fun one for me, because I've either worked at companies where accessibility was almost a dirty word, or we only did accessibility. Like I've only been at 0 or 100. So obviously the one where we only did accessibility, everybody loved accessibility. We talked about accessibility all the time. It was great. It was an accessibility party. But at the other ones, I didn't ask forgiveness or permission. I just did it. And I build accessibly, I estimate like I'm going to build accessibly, and I found that I haven't had to ask for forgiveness, because the things that I build work better and the users like it better, and it's a better user experience for everyone. And even the people who were like, oh, I don't know if accessibility is something that we need at this point, when I show them what the accessible version is, suddenly they're like, wow, this is so much easier to use. And I've even recently had a conversation where, because I was doing that and I wrote like this highly technical article that they happened to see about ARIA labels, I was in a conversation with like leadership, and they were like, I had never thought about accessibility this way. I had always just thought, oh, maybe some people use screen readers, but the way you talk about it and building technically correct with semantic HTML and stuff like that has really changed my view on it. So now I'm openly able to be like, other team, you have to work on this. Like I caught a bunch of color contrast issues. I caught buttons that are actually generic elements, like stuff like that. And that is now approved by leadership. So that's how I've done it.
Great example. And there are many ways how to tackle this. You might have a real problem like a real struggle with your current users. And yeah, by just showing that it's like there's no way, I guess, that anybody would be against like adjusting a struggle that users are actually facing. But if you're not actually having that real struggle, I believe, yeah, as mentioned before, having in general an accessibility person or champion, using all the, like, if there's a team retreats, using where people usually share what they've been working on or talking about topics. They like to share with others, use those moments, or during lunchtime, use those moments to share, to positively share about accessibility in general. And if they consider it as a dirty word, just don't mention the word, but talk about the issues and the struggles and mention them. Yeah, just talk about the solution. And start small, because it's not, Abby mentioned from 0 or 100, but it's impossible to do it 100 all the time. And if you're perceiving friction, or just everybody is so busy, and just start small, start fixing one thing at a time, and set up real expectations so nobody feels overwhelmed. Even you, if you have it as a mission. And yeah, just create guidelines or playbooks, some companies, so people can just have it as a reference, and so they can, if they have, and just let people know that here are the standards and the guidelines that we're following, and that will always be a work in progress. And yeah, so people can independently check on them. But just in general, just try to always create a positive climate around it, because online, because not the accessibility community not always has done a great job in sharing positive awareness of it. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, like some developers that maybe have looked into a few rants about accessibility and just don't want to hear about it anymore, even at work. And that really doesn't help. So just try to be very helpful and supportive instead of pointing fingers. Yeah. Just communicating better.
Thank you. So our next question is, what role does cross-functional collaboration between developers, designers, QA, content creators play in successful accessibility?
I feel like this has been all of Mirela's advice so far boiled down into one question. I mean, it has to be everyone. You have to be able to communicate with everybody without making them feel bad, and educate them if they want to be building the best product they can. Part of that is accessibility, and getting them to see that, whether it's through it's the most technically correct, these are the people we'll be able to bring in. You know, there's no one size fits all for how to tackle accessibility issues in your organization. And the more people you have on board, the easier it is to do. So whether that's having a meeting where you get to talk to people about how they want to be involved in that process, or just making sure that everybody feels like they have a stake in the problem, it's so important to have as many people involved. And as we all know, diversity of thought and multiple eyes on something always makes something better.
And here I'd like to share, I thought of a slide that I had used in a presentation a couple of years ago. I'm sharing it in the chat now. I don't know if you'd like to share the screen and show it, where it specifically shows every aspect of the design or development without maybe mentioning the accessibility issues for each component or each aspect. of the design and development, and who's doing what, basically. So, and at what stage of the product or the website development. And here I'm using UX and UI designer and then web developer. Now these lines are more and more blurred, actually, because there are people that are doing both. But just as a mental, just mentally to have it in your just to have it in mind that what should we do at each stage of the process. So if you have a copywriter, just make sure that they provide well, at least they provide all the content in time for the design stage to start, and that when they provide if they provide also providing images, assets, or if the designer is doing the images and assets, get support from the copywriter if you have it in the team. For the alt text, or choosing if we should not use an alt text for that specific asset. And then we go the content structure of, for example, the semantic HTML. I strongly believe that it's not a developer's, shouldn't be a developer's responsibility. The implementation, yes, but deciding, there are so many, when you provide a blog post, for example, there are even alt tag is part of the semantic HTML. So that should be part of the content, and the designer. The designer should annotate that this page has these different sections, because this is how the content is structured. So just so the developer doesn't have to think, okay, are these sections connected? Are these dependent on each other, or are they totally independent? So is this a section, or should I just use a div here? So this would make the developer's job much easier if the designer would be knowledgeable when it comes to semantic HTML and annotate it in the design file. So yeah, I saw I got your attention, Abby, when I said that, but that's what I mean for that. So when it comes to the content structure, how it is, how sections are built. And sometimes they're clear from there are certain designs where that's clear, but that's not always the case, especially with very creative websites, for example. And yeah, that's one example. Something else that I mentioned here, yeah, well, the animations, for example, yeah, that's a responsibility of the designer who makes those decisions, and then the developer implements. But if they're the same person, yeah, it's then it would be just that one person who take care of that. And ultimately the audit could be the developer, could also be the designer, actually, and or just if you don't have like a specific QA team. So yeah, if you have like if you don't know where to start, having a sort of a very simple chart like that, which could be dynamic and change over time, because this is not doesn't have to stay the same. And yeah, that could be something that could help the collaboration between teams or different roles in a team.
I reacted that way because if there's ever a job opening where you get to be my designer, let me know. I want to know what section.
Okay. I remember that. Yeah, I'm a strong advocate for that, actually.
Thank you, Mirela. I'll go back to the screen I was sharing. It's here. Okay. Yeah, it didn't work. Sorry. I will stop sharing just for a second. Okay, we're back. How do mobile and responsive design challenges differ, considering accessibility across devices?
So this is a fun one because I used to work on the website for a mobile app testing tool. So I got to see all of the requirements that they were testing for, and it looked like a completely different language. But underneath that, the same two concepts apply. You always need to know your tools in depth, what you're working in, and the requirements. And a lot of times the requirements may be worded slightly differently or work slightly differently for a different screen or a different technology, but the underlying concepts are the same. Because I don't have a CS degree. I didn't come to accessibility through the lens of development. But when you start thinking about the people that you're building for and including people with disabilities in your testing, you come to see that the languages might be a little bit different, but you can learn those as long as your priorities are making sure everybody can see your content and thinking about those kinds of things. Deep down, they're the same. And I know as web developers, when we think about all the different sizes of devices that we're building for, things get a little hectic and scary, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to testing and testing with real devices and testing with people with disabilities. So it gets a little bit more complicated, but there are solutions out there. There are companies that provide real device testing and will do it for you, those kinds of things. And yeah, I think that's my answer for that.
From a usability perspective, on mobile, we use our phones by tapping, basically. So just making sure that you're using enough real estate for interactive elements that all sizes of fingers are able to tap on them and make them work. It is in general recommended to use at least for buttons, for example, at least have them at least 40 to 48 pixels of height. And then it depends on the type of the label. And if you're using a text label, then there's no requirement for the width. But if it's an icon link or icon button, yeah, make sure that it's also the width, it's at least 40 or 48 pixels. Yeah, that's like a practical recommendation. And also like the text size, sometimes a certain 16 pixels might be readable on tablets or on your laptop or huge monitors, but on your it might not be that visible on your phone. And yeah, depending on especially the relevance of that certain paragraph or text, just make sure that also on mobile, the font sizes that you're using are readable. And yeah, make sure that the focus management works the same as it works on other devices. And also test with screen readers, because sometimes they don't work. The screen readers on the phone don't work the same as screen readers on your laptop. So yeah, that would also be much recommended to do.
Yeah, so it's TalkBack on Android and VoiceOver on iOS, I think. And same with testing with screen readers. You can familiarize yourself with that. Just, turn it off if you're not learning it at the moment, because I accidentally turned it on in a grocery store one time and I could not figure out how to get it off, or it was just reading my phone screen to everyone. But like the practical recommendations for buttons and mobile, there are similar things for web. I always get annoyed when labels aren't associated with things, because if you click the label, you're also effectively clicking the checkbox and stuff like that. So excellent points. Excellent points.
Yeah, definitely. Like when you have like the checkbox, make sure that the label is also clickable. Yeah. That's a pain that we've all felt at some point, I think.
Yeah, just make things big enough for people to hit or click.
And that will also
Yeah.
make it more intuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had an issue with proximity of buttons too when you're on your phone. So
Yeah.
you try to click one button and then the other one is just so close you end up clicking the other one.
It's you don't want to be the tiny X on the ad that you can't close on those sites where you accidentally click the thing instead of the X. Don't be that person.
Yeah, the deceptive patterns that you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
And it can look malicious even though perhaps the designer or the developer didn't mean it that way, but yeah.
They just have tiny fingers.
Or just never tested.
Yeah.
So what is one change you'd like to see across the tech industry in the next year to advance digital inclusion?
Mine is getting rid of the idea that accessibility is a add-on feature and not part of the MVP. It should always be part of the MVP. We just saw this with Figma sites where even the apology is saying like, oh, I should have caught that. But if it's considered part of the product itself, it's not like an afterthought that you have to go back and like remember and catch.
Yeah, definitely. Having since more and more people use, there are many standard web frameworks out there, and um, we're on a good path with that because most of the most used frameworks already have accessibility built in. So yeah, that's a great achievement that for the whole industry. And yeah, in general, having a more positive approach from the accessibility community, people who would want to share awareness on accessibility and having less finger pointings. That's just my personal take on it because that doesn't help the community and the industry. And yeah, just having, especially with the AI rise, and hopefully that will help people also in increasing awareness and with AI tools just like Visio that is using a framework with accessibility built in. And I hope that it will have there are already other similar tools, and I haven't checked on them. But yeah, I really they have to, if you want to be considered a serious product, that should be built in. I think that's not something that the industry is questioning. Maybe it wasn't like that 5 years ago, and today we got to that point. And yeah, I really hope that we'll have this awareness will increase, and regardless of the the regulations. And now we have in Europe, in June we'll have it will be legally required for a website to be accessible. That is in theory a positive thing if only all the government websites in Europe were also fully accessible. And yeah, we'll see if they will provide an example in that first, and then businesses will follow, like the UK is doing, for example.
Very good. And making it a legal requirement also helps with internal advocacy for accessibility. If someone is resisting that the change, you
Yeah.
can feel it's legally required. So
Yeah, yes. I don't believe in guilt tripping people though, because in the short term that works, but not in the long term. Education and awareness, it's works in the long term.
good, thank you. And And what are the best certification programs or resources available today for professionals who want to deepen their knowledge of digital accessibility?
Okay, so if you're a web developer and you're looking for a free overview of all the basic concepts that you might want to dig deeper on, and just a lot of the accessibility things that are built into HTML. Mozilla Developer Network's Getting Started with the Web Accessibility unit is free. If you are looking to go beyond the basics and want a paid course, Sarah Sudane's Practical Accessibility is super highly rated. And then I have a list of resources that I maintain for coding, and you can use the accessibility tag to filter it down to just accessibility resources. So there should be a lot in there that I've seen people recommend from all over the internet. But going back to the state of digital accessibility advocacy today, you don't have to know everything to be an accessibility advocate. The startling thing that I found when I first started talking about this in the tech space was that people were like, oh, we talk about this so much now. And I was like, this is a lot. So you see a lot of people who are angry, who have been yelling about this for 15 years or more, and we're just now starting to get some of the things that they've been asking for a long time. So the more of us that are out there that consider accessibility a priority and talk about it a lot, the better all of this is going to get for everybody. I think that's it.
Yeah, definitely. There are so many resources out there. Like if you're a true nerd, there's all the WCAG website that has everything included. So at least that's where I started initially, and I don't have a practical recommendation when it comes to courses, because that's not the path that I followed. So I believe having like a genuine a real need for your work, of course, and then that can build up a genuine curiosity in exploring on your own, in testing consistently whatever you're designing and building, in testing other people's websites. There are some websites that are considered to be highly accessible, and try to analyze why they are accessible, like the gov.uk websites, and there are many other bad examples also, and try to analyze them, test them, and reason what to do, what should be improved. And I think by just working, this is how you learn.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of resources I've included in the chat if you guys want to take a look. And
there are certifications, but it's serious. Like it's like studying for a standardized test. You have to you'll know once you want to go for a certification and start putting in the work. But there's a lot of you have to memorize screen reader commands and stuff like that. So it's a goal to build towards.
Is a certification level knowledge something you recommend for every developer, or
if you want to audit sites, definitely go for certifications. If you want to only do accessibility advocacy, definitely go for certifications. If you want to develop accessibly, start by building up all the information or all the knowledge that you can. And once you start seeing a lot of things where you're like, yeah, I know that, then you can start looking into the certifications. But I worked at a company that only did digital accessibility, and I don't have any accessibility certifications. So take that as you will.
Yeah. How can we ensure that vibe coding solutions are designed with and for individuals with disability to meet their specific needs and their preferences?
I think this goes back to our answer for a lot of questions. Know your tools, know your requirements, test with people with disabilities. Another important thing is generating data for the model to be trained on that's accessible. The more accessible sites that we build, the better the models will be able to see those patterns and stuff like that.
Well, ideally test with, of course, with real users. And I touched this a little bit with V0 platform. But whatever platform you're using, if you know that they're building out of existing frameworks, just check out those frameworks. Or if not, then yeah, there's nothing that will at least for now that will eliminate the need for building your own knowledge and being able to assess the code that whatever tool you're using with AI and sending it to production. So yeah, that's just make sure from an ethical perspective, just make sure that the assumptions are that of the AI tool are the ones are aligned with your goals, and have the capabilities to test whatever AI is putting out.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, yeah, we're done with our own questions. If anyone has a question, please type it in the chat, or I will look for raised hands here if you want to raise your hand and ask a question to your speakers. I think we covered a lot in the session, so I don't see any questions in the chat. Maria, Violina, have you seen anything?
No, but thank you so much, Abby and Mirela, for the great advice and for sharing your experience. And it was an amazing way to celebrate Global Accessibility Awareness Day and making sure that everyone has the knowledge to make the web more inclusive.
Well, thank you for inviting us. And yeah, I'm really, really glad that I got to spend this hour with you today and sharing our experiences. And the more we talk, the better about it. So thank you.
Yeah, great way to celebrate the day. Thanks for having me.
Thank you everyone for joining. Let's make a change together. Have a great day and talk to you soon on the next event.
Thank you. Bye. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.